my goodness, the lengths that men have gone, it can almost blow women out the water. Like a lot of the stuff that women were doing, minus some of the more grandiose ones, were fairly, to some degree considered, those things that aren't very big in terms of investment. Like, how many guys do you think will ever admit that they flew a babe out, and when the babe came, she complained that she was on her period, and at some point...
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man whose sickness for the thickness prevents him from skinny dipping. He is also a man who once believed the bukkake was a Japanese form of martial arts. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. I am here to talk about boundaries, or should I say pushing past certain boundaries. Whether it's, on the extreme ends of going above and beyond, and whether it's the extreme ends of going just very, very below the bar. Or, when I kind of think about it, I could also just say that this episode is about bars to some degree, but that's maybe I'm giving a little too much away. Although the title kind of already did that, so I don't know. Either way, thank you so much for listening. I hope you listen all the way till the end. And should you like it, should you dislike it, should you want to contribute or give some feedback, or even better yet, you want to suggest a topic, then you can hit me up through social media. The links are in the description. But if you don't feel like looking at the description, on IG it is at the Breaktime_podcast. On Facebook it is at the Breaktime Podcast. On X it is at Bagaka the D. And on Bluesky it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. The DMs are always open, and I would be more than happy to take your information, your feedback, and utilize it for the betterment of this podcast. Also, if you are on any of those platforms, then a nice follow would also be appreciated, because, I like it when I have followers and shit. Adds credibility and shit. But all in all, thank you so much for listening. Like I said, I hope you listen all the way till the end. And I do want to get into today's topic of the day. It's something that I feel like I've probably stretched out in terms of when I should have discussed it, but I feel like now, even though it might seem a little bit late, is probably still a good a time as any. It's kind of the end of the trend, but there is an explanation that needs to be given. But before I can get into any of that, first off, I want to talk about someone who basically broke a record and just went beyond the bounds. And it is not for what it is that you might think. It's not like someone had sex for 17 hours or some shit. That record, I don't think I have looked at it recently. It's for something a little bit, more done by everyone, but not as nuanced as bedroom matters or making out for 58 hours. This is actually a world record that was broken by a woman who was so into the idea of getting her driver's license that she tried and failed and tried again 959 times, and on the 960th time she finally managed to ace the entire test, both theory and practical. And honestly, it seems like such a wild thing. First of all, I feel like I'd have lost count at about, 56 or some shit in terms of attempts. But this woman, for about 5 straight years, was busy taking the driver's test in her particular country all the way until she got it. And I will kind of get to my thoughts on the entire thing, but let me just read the story real quick. So it says, and I quote, Cha Sa-soon, a South Korean woman, gained international recognition for her extraordinary persistence in obtaining her driver's license. Her journey began in April 2005 when she took the written test for the first time and failed. Undeterred, she continued to retake the test every day, 5 days a week for 3 years. Eventually, she slowed her pace to twice a week but remained committed. After 860 attempts, she finally passed the written exam, only to face another challenge, the practical driving test. It took her 10 more tries to pass, bringing her total number of attempts to a staggering 960 before she finally earned her license in 2010 at the age of 69. Her determination, despite spending over $11,000 in the process, made her a national sensation. The instructors at her driving school, who had watched her struggle for years, celebrated her success with cheers and flowers. South Korean car manufacturer Hyundai even gifted her a brand new vehicle in recognition of her perseverance. While her story recently went viral again on Reddit, sparking debates over whether she truly deserved the license, many users admired her dedication, with one commenting, "Fall 959 times, get up 960." End quote. Okay, First of all, just a quick correction on the math. I'm guessing that her theory exam, or should I say the written exam, was 950 attempts, not 860, because another 10 to make it 960 just seems like there was a problem with math here. But anyways, with that said, when I first read this story, the first thing that clicked in my mind is, if this isn't proof that women just don't know how to drive, I don't know what is. But you know what? I'm not a misogynist. I shouldn't be making such jokes, so I kind of wanted to leave that one on the table. But the other thing that does really stand out is that if you really want a woman to ride and know how to control it well enough, then you first have to get her to 69. Okay, maybe I should stop it with the sex jokes and the misogyny jokes, but all in all, like, this is actually one of these few feats that I look into, that I read about, that I like putting on the podcast, because they're actually quite inspirational. Personally speaking, I don't think I'd have done this many tries. Like, if anything, I feel like most people would probably give up after like the 4th or the 5th try. But this woman was basically doing 3 a week before she eventually got down to 2 a week. Just tests. Written tests, then written and practical tests. Like, that is a lot, to say the least. That is actually quite a lot. Like, if you were doing this in Kenya, and I'm not saying that the Kenyan system is bad or anything, but if you were doing this in Kenya, I feel at some point the instructor would probably ensure that you pass, because they have seen you doing it so much that they're already fed up with you, and they're like, you know what, we'll just get you the license and then you can go and crash the car, fuck yourself up. Eventually you will learn how to drive better after that. Or they will tell you to pay them a certain amount of money and they will ensure that you get your license, because they'll split some cash with the cop that's doing the test, blah blah blah, and eventually you get your license. But you try again and again and again and again. Even though you're not bribing them, I feel like the cops would probably be so used to you that they'd just look at you and be like, alright, you just go through. Because I know people who got their licenses from some of the most basic things that they did during their driving tests. Like, I know a guy who, I kid you the hell not, went for his driving test, and what he did was, he was told to just get into the car, prep himself, turn on the car. He went, did everything, like put on the seatbelt, turned on the car, and he was literally told to just put it into gear, which he did. He was told to indicate, which he did, both right and left, and after that he was told, you know what, you're done, you've passed, get the hell out. It's like that cop did not want to test people that day, and he basically just let the guy get his license just like that. Now, if us guys were in South Korea, I don't think most guys would have their licenses if this is how people are getting their licenses in this country. Or, the other alternative to think about this is, if this old lady actually came to the Kenyan driving schools, or, you know, attempted the Kenyan driving test, there's a pretty good chance that she would pass it on like the 3rd or the 4th try, because by the time you're getting to that level and the cop is so used to seeing you and it's like your 2nd or your 3rd attempt, they basically will just tell you, know what, just buy me lunch and you're getting a license. Or they will just make you do some of the simplest shit so that you can get your license and they don't have to see you again. Like, it's literally like that. Because to some degree, it's like they don't really want to do it. Like, it's probably one of the most annoying bits of the job, like doing the test itself, more so the practical side of it. And they probably just want to get it over and done with so that they can go and get their lunch, because probably for them, they don't even think about it as like, oh, you know, this is like a license to kill or some shit. It's just basically like, all right, this person is gonna learn how to drive, and they will join the rest of the other fuck ups on the road that are madmen. And that's kind of just it. But all in all, this is an absolutely inspirational story. I hope it does inspire more and more people to just go and try again. Because even though you don't get it the first time or the second time or the third time or the 959th time, you might just get it the 960th time. And with that said, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode. Now, not too long ago, actually, why am I saying not too long ago? For the past probably about month, if I can call it that, there's been a trend that's been going on TikTok as well as IG, where women are busy talking about the extents that they went for guys that ended up not really being with them, or ended up playing them or putting them through some form of character development. The challenge is called the bar is too low challenge, and women would basically do videos where they would sometimes talk either as themselves, on behalf of others, or amongst a group of other women, where they would talk about how the bar is too low, they did A, B, C, or D for the man, and they still ended up with some version of pie in the face or just clownery. Now, it's particularly interesting to listen to as a trend because you just listen to some of the stuff that women have done for the sake of guys that they really liked, and it might seem a little bit sweet on some ends, but on the others it just looks like someone was really, really down bad or just was willing to go to the absolute pits just for a guy that they liked. And I will play a clip to sort of give some example of this. This lady was sort of doing compilations of this entire thing. So without further ado,
the bar is so low, my ex-bestie is pregnant for my husband of 10 years. The bar for friendship needs to be raised. The bar is so low, he always comes to my place, but I don't know where he stays. I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this, you're dealing with a married man. Sorry. The bar is so low, I paid for his grandma's hospital bill so she doesn't die before blessing us. Did she die? He was preparing you to be ghosted. The bar is so low, I became a stepmom at 19. There should be an age barrier to being a stepmom. The bar is so low that I'm a stepmom at 19. I'm being cheated on with a 26-year-old. All he does is apologize every time without changing. We are having a teenage stepmom pandemic. The bar is so low, I met another girl in his apartment. God knows what happened between them, but I forgave him and still stayed the night. Is the bar in the room with us? The bar is so low, he stood me up on 3 consecutive dates, and I still agreed to meet him up on the 4th one, and he still didn't show up. Consistency is key. That's a green flag right there. The bar is so low, I believe he was busy for 12 hours. Yes, he was busy with another woman. The bar is so low, I gave him almost half my entire savings for a project of his, and he still broke up with me. You are entitled for return on investments. The bar is so low, I went to ask him why he was cheating. First of all, what? And I found the other girl and asked her to leave so we could talk. Yeah, you're entitled to privacy in matters like this. The bar is so low, I caught him cheating, and his only concern is why I checked his phone. Why did you check his phone? As soon as you feel like you need to check his phone, right there, that's the sign you should leave. The bar is so low, I was excited when he texted back within 24 hours. The dopamine hits of a man that is intermittently ghosting you. Oh God, relatable. The bar is so low, I skipped my master's in a top university to be his wife. Still can't forgive myself. It's not too late, girl. Now you've learned a lesson, go finish that degree, babe.
okay, so there's a bunch of these videos that are going around, and different people have given their outlooks on how low the bar has been with them, and some range from fairly simple things to like, oh, the bar is so low, I paid for every single date and he still ghosted me, to stuff that's about as extreme as having kids for the dude, and the guy still does not stay with you, or like in the case of one of the people that was mentioned here, basically giving up your masters in a top university just to be with dude, and he still did not stay with you. And these are things that women kind of like made a trend with this whole bar too low challenge, and it was pretty interesting because it was almost like a without judgment case where it's like, yes, we judge you, but we only judge you as far as it's funny, nothing beyond that. But what happened was some women actually started to come up. There was one specifically that made quite a bit of noise and was like, why is it that the guys aren't stepping in to say something? Why is it that the guys aren't contributing to these discussions? Like, we want to hear how low the bar is for them, because like, y'all are making this boring. Like, give us your side as well, then we can come out and we can have a laugh about this entire thing. And unfortunately I don't have the clip with me here, but like, shorty went off. She was like, oh, guys are boring, oh, you guys should be giving us some of these bits. And the thing is, in as much as I feel like, yes, maybe guys might have a laugh, I could totally understand why most guys, if not all, would just not do this challenge. Like, guys generally, and I'll just go ahead and say straight guys generally, because I don't know about the LGBTQ, but guys generally would not be able to do this challenge and just kind of like pass it off as fun, because for us it's way more than that. Like, what women consider as like the bar being too low, or like them basically doing some level of quote unquote clownery for the sake of a guy, guys basically do this every so often in their lives. Like, most guys will have done some version of something that would fall under the whole bar being too low type challenge. whether it's same things like, while you're in university, you used to do all her assignments while she was getting railed by another dude. Like whether it is stuff from like after, like when you guys started working together, or if you worked in the same company, or you were part of the same friend group, whether it was things that you did while you were trying to bag a babe or a shorty that you're crushing on. Like guys do this all the time. So I can get why on one end there's a woman that's like, guys should be giving us these stories, but on the other hand, for us guys, it's almost like, I don't want to say a rite of passage for us, but it's one of those things that us guys will do and will go through, but we can't openly voice it. And the reason behind that is that with women, it's not the same way as guys whenever you're discussing this whole thing of the bar being too low. With women, like, y'all can pass it off as funny and you can be like, oh shit, you went that far, and then they laugh it off and just kind of forget it. Like, there's that sort of emotional leniency that can allow women to do that and move on. But with guys, we don't have that. Like, one of the things that I've noticed over time is that guys don't get the same level of emotional leniency as women. Women, because they are considered to be quote unquote emotional, they can go and do, very crazy acts all in the name of love. And after they go and they laugh about it and, it's like sort of past tense for them, it becomes just like a point of comedy. It becomes one of those things where they talk about it and it's like, oh my goodness, I had this experience, or I did this and this, and it'll either be funny or wild to them, but it'll just be good as like a story, if I can put it like that. But with guys, that's not how it works. One, we don't get that level of emotional leniency, and two, it kind of impacts us differently. In that, while it might be considered like, emotional comedy, if I can call it that, or just, something that you did that, you can probably forget and move past, for men, it's looked at from a point of guilt, it's looked at from a point of shame, and it's one of those things that if we ever admitted publicly would end up impacting our reputation amongst the people that have that information with them. And before some guy comes up and is like, oh, no, that's not entirely accurate, there are instances where it isn't looked at from a point of shame or guilt. Like there are points where it's considered to be like not a bad thing, or you like making sacrifices for your partner and it pays off. And that's usually when it works out with a babe and you kind of have, a pretty good happy ever after doing that particular act for the person that you're with and that you want to be with, and it actually kind of works out, which is a particularly risky thing. And for most guys, we're always trying to take risks here and there for people that we have some sort of affection or some desire to be with. And so if we do start airing out how the bar was too low, it kind of now becomes one of those situations where did it work and did it not, of which most of them don't work. So it's a point of ridicule, so it just looks bad on us. But if it did work, that's when guys are like, okay, you really believed in this babe and they worked out, which kind of puts it in a position where it's very hit or miss, because we're always going to be doing this. Like I said, like guys are almost always taking the bar to some level, which might be considered low or completely thrown away for the sake of someone that we're really into. And I'll give you a pretty good example of this. There are guys that will basically put their babes through school. And I kid you the hell not. Like, people have heard these stories time and time again. A babe is like taken to university by this guy that seems to have a job, so he manages to pay school fees and shit. And when that babe manages to graduate, or as she's about to graduate, or as she's getting towards the tail end of university, she suddenly starts expressing that she has no interest in the man, or she doesn't have interest in the man, probably because the guy isn't as educated or something of the sort. And she will talk about how she's interested in another guy, or she'll end up leaving him for another guy, or will cheat on him with another guy that's in university. Stories like that have been mentioned a lot. I've read a bunch of them, and it does kind of fuel the whole idea that guys give nowadays, which is you should never take a girl to school if she isn't your daughter and if you're not her father, or something of the sort. Like, that is something that guys will say. But what if I told you that there are some instances where guys have taken a babe to school, she's gotten a degree, and they are still together, and she's a very learned woman, and she seems to be doing particularly well for themselves. Now, if you say that, suddenly it's like, oh, he believed in her so much, and he sacrificed, and they are an example of a great couple, blah blah blah. And mind you, I actually know someone that paid school fees for his babe. Like, real talk, the guy went ahead, paid school fees for her, and they are together right now. They are doing great. They got married, and they seem to be living their best lives as is. Now, if it didn't work out, it would have been a case of the bar being too low. But right now, it looks like a sacrifice that paid off. So the whole bar too low thing kind of does impact men particularly differently, in that, is that additional stretch that you went, is that boundary that you crossed, which most guys probably wouldn't, working out for you? And if it does, then it doesn't seem as bad. But if it doesn't, it's such a big impact on us reputation wise, whereby for women, like, they may laugh about this and it's almost like them wearing a clown suit for a day or two and laughing about it, but for us it's like wearing an armor of shame. So we just can't talk about stuff like that. Also, if we do start talking about how low the bar was, and we go beyond the typical relationship bits and we just go to babes that we wanted to smash, my goodness, the lengths that men have gone, it can almost blow women out the water. Like, a lot of the stuff that women were doing, minus some of the more grandiose ones, were fairly to some degree considered, those things that aren't very big in terms of investment. Like, how many guys do you think will ever admit that they flew a babe out, and when the babe came, she complained that she was on her period, and at some point, he found her busy, I don't know, being railed by the waiter in, like, for example, like the swimming pool bathroom or some shit. Like, if such a thing happened, how many guys would ever admit that to their homies? Barely any. And you think that they'll come out and admit it to the internet? Like, the bar was so low, they managed to do all of that, and they still paid for the flight back to the house. Like, they will never admit to doing such a thing. There are guys that have basically paid for trips. There are guys that have basically paid school fees for kids because they're into babes, just for those babes to end up ghosting them, or to end up with another dude, or to go and get pregnant by the baby daddy. Like, there's so many things that guys have done, especially when you put money into the mix, that would make it quite shameful for us to actually come out and start speaking about them, because one, we can't do shit about it, and two, even though you're trying to advise the next generation of men or to speak about it in a comedic manner, there's nothing that it'll do besides show how gullible men can be if they're really into a babe, which kind of puts us in a position of weakness. And for the individuals that talk about it, it just makes us look bad, which therein lies the whole point that I was bringing up about it being an armor of shame. If you're having it on you as an armor of shame, then you don't want to wear that armor. And if you don't want to wear that armor, then of course you don't want people to see you in that armor. So if anything, like, as guys, I can totally get why guys didn't bring out their stories, because if guys were to start talking about the lengths that they've gone for women that they wanted to be with, I feel like women would probably start sympathizing with guys. The only thing is, I feel like first those guys will be ridiculed before the women start sympathizing with guys. And for guys, when it gets to that point where you're being ridiculed for things that you've done, it can affect us quite a bit. And as a lot of people have probably noticed, it's affected a lot of guys nowadays, which is why the dating market is so full of shit for a lot of people. And as such, it just doesn't seem like a good idea for guys to talk about stuff like this. For women, it's fine. Like, y'all can talk about it, laugh about it. There's a certain level of emotional leniency that women will just generally get, whereby anytime they do something that seems like it was done completely emotionally, they'll just accept it, or at least they'll just be accepted for it, because, it's women and women can be emotional, and when you're doing something for love, blah blah blah, like, they can be laughed at, but still they'll get that emotional leniency from society. Guys don't get that. We're expected to be emotional to some degree, but to mostly function with our head straight. We're expected to be rational and logical. And that's not something that we're willing to give up just for the sake of a bunch of comedy on the internet. And you could say that the women's bar was too low, but the men's bar, that one, you could take it lower, but it'll probably be way more sensitive if we start showing how low the bar can be. And for that reason, we just wouldn't really do that great if we actually let it slide. And to kind of conclude all of this, women can fuck up and either sweep it under the rug or use it as comedy. And that's perfectly fine. They get the leeway from society to do that. Men, on the other hand, we are judged by our fuck-ups. Most of our emotional fuck-ups, we are judged by those fuck-ups, because if that is considered to be like the low that a guy can go, then he will very easily feel, especially after being ridiculed, that he is never going to amount to anything more than that, which is why you find a shit ton of guys will usually overcompensate, and that usually tends to hurt the other gender. And the moment that happens, everyone starts complaining again, oh, men need to heal, blah, blah, blah. Although, then again, I might just be wrong about this, and maybe the reason why guys didn't participate is because we just don't post up all that much on social media. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG, it is at the Breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the Breaktime Podcast. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.